Sorry.
That's okay,
Okay.
is based in McPherson, Kansas, so fairly centrally located in the state, but our staff work all remotely, and that works out quite well for us, as it has for many, especially since COVID. So here's a map that shows you kind of where Farmers Union states and organizations reside all across the country. As you can see, there are some that have merged, like the Northwest. You know, you've got those 3 states there. And you've got Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, who I worked for at one point in my career. So you've got Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, and then up here in the Northeast, you've got New England. And you'll see where our strengths are. We're very strong through the heartland, through the Midwest, and out into the western states, of course, a little bit. We also have representation in Alaska and Hawaii, which is kind of cool. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of strength in the Southeast, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But we do have individual members who reside in those states. So that just gives you an idea of kind of the area that we cover. These are the principles that we stand for as an organization: legislation, cooperation, and education. These are this is the foundation of who we are and what we do. Legislation, of course, we focus on both the state and federal levels. So for those who are in Kansas, we obviously our state capital is in Topeka. We have a contract lobbyist who represents us, and then we go down there occasionally throughout the session to represent our members based on our policy. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we've got a national organization based in DC. Cooperation, working together, coming together, and through compromise is a big part of what we do. But we also are very big on the cooperative business model, which means the members own the business. And then, you know, if any income comes off of that, if there's any profit that comes off of that, that goes right back either into the co-op or to the members directly as dividends. And then finally, education. That's essential to our success. And we are committed to providing opportunities and programs of excellence, not only to our members, but also to the public. It's really important that we educate the public on these issues, and that's part of why I'm here tonight. Our policy is really important to us. It's what we believe in. It's what we stand for. And so if you get a chance at some point, I would invite you to go to our website and take a look. It's kansasfarmersunion.org/policy. And, you know, just take a look at what we believe in, what our issues are, the things that we care about. And it's not all cows, sows, and plows, mind you. It's things that matter to our rural communities. It's education, it's healthcare, it's infrastructure, it's all these things that make up community. And we're really proud of that. So you'll get a chance to take a look at that when you have time. This is how our policy process works. It starts at that local level down at the bottom, and it works its way up. We're not a top-down organization. We're very much, as it says, a grassroots policy process. So starts local, county, state, and region. And then here just recently in early March, we were at our national convention down in Oklahoma City, where we lifted up policies that we support here in Kansas and lifted that up to the national level. We do that on an annual basis. So what's in that policy? Well, all of these things here and so much more. As I mentioned, you know, we care about a lot of different things. But this is just a smattering of some of the issues that we are concerned about, have thoughts on, have opinions on, and certainly use those to guide our organization, and then also guide those policymakers either in Topeka or in Washington. So we're going to get into the Farm Bill, and there's a lot to unpack here. So just keep that in mind. But this is why you need to care about cuts to Farm Bill, or excuse me, cuts to farmers and the next Farm Bill. So we're going to talk about a number of things here tonight. These are the 9 Ps, as I like to call them. We're going to talk a little bit about the past. We're going to talk about the parts of the Farm Bill, the players, the price, the process, progress with the Farm Bill, the politics that are involved. We're going to skip over some of our priorities just for time's sake, but we will touch on possibilities. So in the last, let's say 92 years now, there have been only 18 farm bills. And as you'll see, the farm bill comes around about every 4 to 6 years on average. But in some cases, you'll notice like 1948 to 1949, there was only 1 year between those bills. And so it just kind of varies from time to time. But we've only had 18 of these since 1933. So there's some good trivia for you the next time you get that question at bar trivia night. The 2018 Farm Bill, which is the one that we are operating under currently, has 12 titles. Over the years, it has evolved. It started out with just a handful of titles and then has now evolved to these 12. And those are, as you can see here, commodities, conservation, trade, nutrition, credit, rural development, research, forestry, energy, horticulture, crop insurance, and then the all-encompassing miscellaneous is Title 12. And I'm going to run through each one of those very briefly, just so you get an idea of what I mean when I say all of these things. So Title I is the commodity programs title, and it provides for a major decline in revenue for those commodity crops that we grow primarily here in Kansas and other places all across the country. So we're talking corn and soybeans and wheat and rice and peanuts and cotton and those kinds of things. It also provides protection against a fall in milk prices, so it helps our dairy farmers. It also has disaster relief for livestock producers and folks who have tree fruit. So those folks that are growing apples and peaches and those kinds of things. And it also has import barriers on sugar. In Title II, that's the conservation title, and it rewards responsible environmental stewardship and improved land management techniques. Title III is trade, and not only does it support ag export programs like the Market Access Program, it also provides for international food assistance with emergency and non-emergency programs. Title IV is our nutrition program. We're going to be talking about that a lot tonight. So I'm not going to get into a lot of the details there, but that's the nutrition title. Title V is credit. So yes, there's a title in there that allows for farmers to be able to borrow money through the federal government so that they can get operating loans for their farms, buy cattle, buy equipment, those kinds of things. Title VI is rural development. So it includes programs like internet and telecommunication access, planning for small communities, and it also helps small businesses. Title VII, research, extension, and related matters. So this kind of goes back to our land-grant universities. So here in Kansas, we have Kansas State University. We also have Haskell Indian Nations University. Both of those are our land-grant universities, and you will have those in your state wherever you're from as well. So there's a lot of funding that goes into them. Title VIII is forestry. So managing our natural forest resources. Title IX is energy. So we're talking biofuels, research, demonstrations, your solar, wind, all of those things. Title X is horticulture. So this is the title where we really matter as eaters, because it's the products, it's the commodities, quote unquote, that we consume. The very first title is the products that tend to go into livestock feed or biofuels and those kinds of things. This deals with a lot of the produce that we consume. Title 11 is the crop insurance title. This is extremely important to farmers because it's the only safety net that they have in times of, horrible, disastrous weather events and those kinds of things. And then finally, Title 12 is that miscellaneous. It's that catch-all title where everything else goes. So there's programs in there for livestock and poultry producers and others who aren't covered in previous titles. It also helps those limited resource and socially disadvantaged farmers as well. So that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of what's in the Farm Bill. But I love this image here, and I don't know the cartoonist that drew this, but I wish I did, because I'd love to give him credit for it, because This was a quote from President Obama when he signed the 2014 Farm Bill into law. He said, quote, "It is like a Swiss Army knife," end quote. And I think it's just perfect the way they've drawn this out. You know, you've got your health and nutrition and research and safety net and jobs and infrastructure, conservation and innovation. It's all packed in to one big piece of legislation. So the Farm Bill truly impacts all Americans. It is one piece of legislation. It's an omnibus, meaning it contains many different facets that make it up, that impacts every single person in this country at any given level, at any given time. So I'm going to ask for a little bit of audience participation here. So when we talk about food security, and we're going to talk about that a lot tonight, America's public investment in agriculture through Farm Bill programs helps secure our domestic food supply, and it keeps our country strong while we benefit from high quality, affordable food. So my question is, how many farms are there in the United States? Are there any guesses?
Do people want to put their guesses in the chat? How many farms there are in the United States? Boy, I'm going to be so off.
Let's take a guess.
Okay.
I'll just say this, it is in the millions.
Okay.
I'll give you that.
Well, my answer of 5,000 is just way off, Nick. Okay.
And yes, hobby farms count. The only reason or the only way that you can consider yourself a farm is if you sell $1,000 worth of product off of your farm. So that
so like a lot of urban farms that we're seeing.
Exactly. That is considered a farm. And
well,
I've seen the answer pop up a couple times already.
Yeah.
And it is, sorry, got to click here. 2 million farms in the United States.
Okay.
So there you go. Good job to all of you who guessed that. Pat yourself on the back. So conservation is really important in the Farm Bill. Obviously, I talked about how farmers want to be good stewards. That's really important because they're passing that on to the next generation, you know, taking good care of the land so the next generation has it. And I would like to ask again now, more audience participation. How many acres do you think are covered by the conservation program? How many acres? And again, we're talking millions.
Okay. All right. How many acres do we have in here?
Give you a little time here.
That are covered by the conservation bill. Ooh, no idea. We've got from 1.5 to 300 million.
Okay, well, it's definitely between the two. It is, drum roll, 140 million acres.
Wow.
So we've got 140 million acres of farm ground, crop ground, you know, those kinds of things in the conservation programs.
Okay.
Maybe if my clicker will work here. Oh, sorry. There we go, 140 million. Hopefully you didn't see that last one. Nope. So risk management, I talked about how important crop insurance is for farmers. It is the only safety net that they have to protect their investment in their crops. And so I'm going to ask again, how many crop insurance acres are there in the country? How many acres of cropland are covered by crop insurance? And this is a big number, still in the millions, pretty big number.
We got 100 million. That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
350.
Cindy, you're getting close. All right. I'm going to go ahead and give it to you. It is 454.3 million acres. So a ton of acres under crop insurance. And finally, and I mentioned this earlier, we're going to talk a lot about SNAP. We're going to talk a lot about nutrition programs, but addressing hunger, the Farm Bill includes nutrition programs that are intended to ensure the most vulnerable among us have access to healthy, affordable food. How many individual SNAP participants are on SNAP at any given time? Let's answer that question. Again, we're in the millions.
In any given time, how many people are on SNAP? I'm gonna put,
Cindy, you're doing great.
yeah,
I'm just
Cindy.
going to go ahead and say, Cindy, you got this one
Okay,
because it is 41.1 million people at
okay,
any
are
given
on
time.
SNAP. Interesting. Hey, Nick, real quick before we keep going,
Yeah,
a quick question here.
yeah,
Back to conservation. What
sure.
is the percentage of farmland in conservation?
The percentage of farmland, I'd have to pull that.
Okay,
I
that's
don't know
fine.
that off the top of my head.
Not a worry.
Um,
Okay,
but
thanks.
yeah,
So we got 43 million in SNAP.
41.1
Okay,
is the
perfect.
number right now. So, and usually, folks, this is only for about a period of about 6 months that people need to be on the program on SNAP. So it's not a long-term thing, and it is truly a hand up, not a handout. And that's why it's so important that we keep that program going.
Mhm.
So you all know we're dealing with a new administration and we have a new Congress. So let's kind of dig into that. And here's where things are right now. And this isn't quite correct because there have been a couple special elections that have taken place. And unfortunately, on the House side, there have been a couple deaths as well. So the numbers aren't exact, but they're pretty darn close to what they should be or what they are right now. So over on the Senate side, of course, there's 100 senators. Each state gets two. 47 Democrats and 53 Republicans. So the margins are pretty tight. You move over to the House side, and we're looking at that time, January 21 of 25, 433. I think that's still the number we're at right now, given the recent deaths that we've had. But we're looking at around 215 Dems and 218 Republicans. So the margins are significantly tighter over on the House side. And we've been used to this for some time now. This has been the case for quite a while. So we're dealing with tight margins. It's hard to pass anything, let alone something as big as the Farm Bill. But these are the four players or the four corners of the Farm Bill. These are the folks who are the leadership of both the House and Senate Agriculture Committees. So over on the left, you've got Senator John Bozeman from Arkansas, who's the chair of the Senate Ag Committee. He has served as the ranking member prior to the Republicans taking over leadership. And then below him is Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. She's now the new ranking member on the Senate Ag Committee. Both have served on the Ag Committee for quite some time in the Senate. Over on the right then, in the top right corner, we've got Representative G.T. Thompson of Pennsylvania. He chairs the House Ag Committee and has now for a couple years. And then you've got Angie Craig below him, and she is the new ranking member on the House Ag Committee. She's from Minnesota as well, and that's very unique. It's unique that you've got two leaders from the same state that are at that level, and it's pretty cool for Minnesota to have that. So props to you all. But keep in mind where these folks are from, and keep in mind also what is grown in these states. You know, what crops are grown there, what kind of livestock are grown there. So in Arkansas, you've got a lot of cattle and you've got a lot of cotton and you've got a lot of peanuts and those kinds of things. You go to Pennsylvania, you've got a lot of dairies and small farms and you've got, you know, more diversity. You get to Minnesota and you've got just about everything under the sun that you can imagine. So those are all important things to keep in mind as we talk about the players and the Farm Bill and who's influencing them as they make these decisions. So here is a map of the congressional districts of the United States. And these that are in red and blue obviously are the ones that are members of the House Agriculture Committee. So you can kind of see where the players are coming from. And here in Kansas, anyway, we have two. We have Tracy Mann there on the left, who represents that big first district. That's that great big red district there that I live in when I'm not in Lenexa, Kansas, when I'm back on my farm in Republic County. And then we have Sharice Davids, who is a Democrat from this area, actually. She represents the area that I'm sitting in right now. So those are the two that we have for Kansas. And then over on the Senate side, you can see where we have the members of the Ag Committee. Of course, there's a lot of strength in the upper Midwest and Great Plains. down in the south, southeast, and then all the way up into the east and northeast, and then a couple from out west. But in Kansas, and you'll notice that there's a handful of states that have diagonal lines running through them, those stripes. Those states have both of their senators on the committee. And for the first time in quite a long time, Kansas now has both of our senators, Jerry Moran up top and Roger Marshall down below. And Jerry Moran is also on the Senate Agriculture Appropriations Committee. And that's where all the money comes from that funds all these programs. So just a little bit of history for you. The last time Kansas had this much representation in the House and Senate Ag Committees was back in 1993. And that's when we had these three individuals, then Representative Pat Roberts, then Senator Bob Dole, and then Representative Dan Glickman. So we're actually above where we were, 30 some years ago as far as representation goes. And that matters significantly. So here's some other leadership in the new 119th Congress. You've got Schumer from New York and Thune from South Dakota. Thune also serves on the Senate Agriculture Committee and is very close with what's going on there on the ag side. And then on the House side, you've got Hakeem Jeffries of New York and then Mike Johnson of Louisiana. So again, keep in mind where all these people are coming from, where they live, who they represent, because that is all very, very important when it comes to this. We also have new leadership at USDA. Obviously, we have a new secretary there, Brooke Rollins. She's the Secretary of Ag. We should take that nominee out of there. That's a mistake on my part because she was confirmed here not all that long ago. And then the names over in the white box over to the side, those are all people who work underneath her at USDA, and they are all awaiting Senate appointments as we speak. So here's a bit of a timeline that shows you kind of where things are with the Farm Bill. Let's go back over here to the left. In September of 23, September 30th, actually, of 2023, the 2018 Farm Bill expired. So it was a 5-year Farm Bill. It expired on September 30th. And then in December of 2023, we passed an extension. That was the first extension. May of 2024, so just about a year ago now, the House and Senate both released their frameworks of the Farm Bill, what they kind of wanted to see in the Farm Bill. And then the House Ag Committee released their bill text on May 17th. So about, a little over 2 weeks after that May 1st date. May 24th, the House Ag markup passed in committee. So only a week later. So people had a week to go through, people in the House Ag Committee had a week to go through that massive bill and then passed it in a markup in the committee. The Senate GOP released their updated framework in June of 2024. November of 2024, of course, was the month of the election. The Senate Democrats released their full bill text. And then December 21st of 2024, talks dissolved, extension number 2 passed, and that was part of the American Relief Act of 2025. And then, of course, we've got that big question mark off to the right. And that's where we're at right now. And, we talk about a 2023 Farm Bill. Well, that's passed. We talk about a 2020 Farm Bill, 2024 Farm Bill. That's passed. Now we're just about halfway through 2025. I don't even put a year on it anymore. I just say the next Farm Bill because we don't know. We don't know when we're going to get this. The price of the Farm Bill. This is what we're looking at when it comes to money. The total amount between 2023 and 2032 is valued at around $1.3 trillion. It's a significant amount of money. And as you can see from this pie chart, the good majority of it comes from nutrition. That's where the lion's share of the Farm Bill really is. And that's anywhere from 80 to 85% of the Farm Bill at any given time. And then, you'd get into the crop insurance and conservation and all these other programs, which are just slivers compared to that. But that's the reality. And as I've said, we're going to talk about that more.
Nick, to clarify, when you're saying nutrition, you mean SNAP benefits?
Yeah, SNAP is the main one, but there's many others as well.
Sure.
There's the WIC program and TFAP and all that, but SNAP is the main one. Yeah. So the process, let's talk about that. So one of the things that starts off a farm bill are committee hearings, and that's when both the Senate and the House Ag committees hold these hearings where they bring people in to Washington, experts on issues, and they talk about what's going on, what works in the farm bill, what doesn't work, and so they bring these panels of individuals in to talk about that. So that starts the process. Then we get into field hearings, and that's where the members of both the Senate and the House Ag committees actually go to the people. They go back to their districts, they go back to their states, and they hold these open hearings where people like the woman on the left there can stand up and she gets 3 to 5 minutes to talk about the things that matter to her. So, and there's we've actually participated in a few of those. I'll show you pictures of that. So here's kind of a pathway to the new farm bill. Each committee, of course, drafts, amends, and then votes on its own version of the bill. And then each full chamber or the floor debates, amends, and votes on the bill from its respective committee. But we should all recognize this guy from Schoolhouse Rock. There's Bill. And as I said earlier in the timeline, Bill over here on the House side is kind of stuck between the Ag Committee and then the full House. He has not advanced into the full House for a vote yet. And over here on the Senate side, Bill's still hanging out in the Senate Ag Committee. He has not received a markup. He hasn't received a hearing. So he's just hanging out over there. So here's a roundtable that we participated in a good time ago with Sharice Davids, who's again the congresswoman from the Kansas City area. This was in Garnett, Kansas. And then Senator Marshall held a roundtable in Manhattan, and then Representative Mann and G.T. Thompson held a Farm Bill listening session in Gypsum, Kansas, near Salina. So the next part of the process is the committee markup, and I mentioned that a little bit ago. But this is an image from back in, I believe it was the 20, I want to say this was maybe the 2014 Farm Bill. Chairman Pat Roberts of Kansas is there on the left at the end of the table. But all the people sitting around the conference table there are U.S. senators, and then the people around on the periphery, on the outside part of the room, those are their staff. They're the brains of everything, and they're the ones that are basically telling the senators what to do for the most part. So they're marking up the bill. And then the leaders from the House and Senate, including committee chairs, form a conference committee. And that's what this image is right here. So they marry the two bills together. They bring senators and representatives together to discuss their bills and bring them together. And as you'll look in front of each one of them, that's the bills themselves. So one is the House version, one is the Senate version, and they literally go through it line by line, page by page, and bring the two together.
Hey, Nick, you might be
Yeah,
getting to this, but I think the folks are eager to hear like what it means now to have the Farm Bill. Like, where are we now with everything?
sure.
So,
Yeah, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. Yep. So after this process takes place, then they debate on it and they vote on it. And then once they pass that, it's sent to the White House for the president's signature. So there you go. Bill turned into law there with President Obama. That was the 2014 Farm Bill. So where are we now? Well, this is a picture from 2012 when we held a Farm Bill Now rally on the lawn in front of the U.S. Capitol. We didn't get that Farm Bill until 2014. I mentioned earlier that 2023 was the deadline for the last Farm Bill, the one we're operating under right now, which is the 2018 Farm Bill. Well, we passed 23, we passed 24, now we're in 25. We've got until September 30th of 2025. If we don't pass a new Farm Bill by then, or if we don't extend the current Farm Bill, then it reverts back to 1949 law. And that is good in a number of ways because then you get parity pricing for the items that farmers sell. So it drives those prices up, but it also means that consumers have to pay more for those things. And it means that our trade partners have to pay more for those things. So they're not going to let that happen. That's not going to take place. So basically, we are not looking at a farm bill now. We are looking at a farm bill later. And when this administration took over, when the new Congress came in January, we were told that the farm bill was a priority. We were going to see it move. Things were going to start happening right away, and that they wanted to get it passed by the August recess. So Congress always takes an August recess when they go home and meet with everybody and do all that. So far, nothing has happened. I mean, there's been behind the scenes talks about, what might take place. We've heard conversations about maybe there being this idea of a quote unquote skinny farm bill, meaning they would take the current farm bill and then open up certain sections and tweak things, make little fixes here and there, and then close it back up and then pass that as the new farm bill. But, a lot has happened since the last time we passed a farm bill in 2018, namely COVID, and we learned a lot from COVID, especially when it comes to nutrition, food insecurity, and those kinds of things. But we live in a whole different world than we did in 2018. So we really have to do our due diligence, and we have to pass a farm bill that works for 2025. And, the next 5 to 6 years. So right now, things are kind of in a bit of a limbo phase. Actually, here in just a couple weeks, a group of us are going out to DC to have conversations with members of Congress in both the House and Senate Ag committees, go to USDA and talk about these things and figure out kind of where things are, where the appetite is. Unfortunately, we're also hearing that there's talk that maybe we won't see another farm bill until after the 2026 midterm elections. And I think that's unfortunate too, because we keep kicking this can down the road and we keep having, all of these issues come up, the cuts that we're seeing that are happening under this administration, the challenges that farmers and consumers and so many others are dealing with. I don't think we can wait until 2026 to get this done, or 2027 for that matter. We need to get a farm bill, and we need to get it now. So that's kind of where things are at this point. And right now, Congress is on adjournment. They're on their little spring break. They're back in their district. This is a cartoon that I found in a 1924 Union Farmer, which was our Kansas Farmers Union newspaper. Here's the old farmer with his big old hat, and he says, "They told me to stand here and wait, and they'd chase in a solution to my problems." And there goes the House and Senate, laughing all the way home. So things haven't changed much in 100 years, obviously.
They haven't. Wow.
So one of the big questions we always get when we talk about the Farm Bill is, why is SNAP in the Farm Bill, or why are nutrition programs in the Farm Bill? And I'm going to talk about that. So these two guys are why. You've got Senator George McGovern, a Democrat from South Dakota, on the left, and somebody that many of us should know, especially those of us in Kansas, Senator Bob Dole, Republican of Kansas. These two individuals are why we have nutrition programs in the Farm Bill. Back in the 70s, they realized that there was a lot of commodities out there, meaning crops that farmers were growing and they weren't getting good prices for them, but there were also a lot of hungry people. And they tied the two together. And the reporter asked Senator Dole, "Why would you put food stamps in the Farm Bill?" And Senator Dole, in his dry Kansas wit, said, quote, "Let's see, food and agriculture, do they have something in common with each other?" Of course they do. And the late Barry Flinchbaugh, K-State ag economist, said, "If you take SNAP out of the Farm Bill, that is the last farm bill ever, period." That was back in 2016. He passed away in 2020. And believe me, I would like to ask him a lot of questions about what's happening right now. In fact, he was one of my favorite professors at K-State. So I've said this already, but 80 to 85% of the funding in the Farm Bill goes to food and nutrition programs. If you take 80 to 85% of that funding away, it leaves USDA a shell of its former self. There would be no need for a USDA on the cabinet level if you take SNAP out of the Farm Bill. Everything else could literally be farmed out to other agencies. And urban members of Congress don't have any reason to support crop insurance without a nutrition program. But I would also note that, especially after COVID, we found out that food insecurity is not just an urban problem. It is very much a rural problem as well. It's an American problem. There are lots and lots of people who are food insecure, and it doesn't matter if they live in Johnson County or if they live back home where I do in Republic County. There's a lot of people that deal with food insecurity.
Hey,
So
Nick,
here's,
we
yeah,
have a lot of questions about people wanting to talk about how farmers are being affected by this administration, like what have changes at the USDA meant for farmers,
yep,
right? And then what the cuts to USDA and USAID mean to us right now. So
yeah.
we've got several asking that.
Okay, we're going to get to USAID and I'll get to the others as well. So just hang tight, okay? We're just about done with the Farm Bill. So this is an old image of the congressional districts of the United States. I don't have a new image like this, but this shows you that there are 435 congressional districts in the country. Only about 35 of them are considered rural. So rural is very much in the minority when it comes to trying to get a farm bill passed. When we are trying to get conservation programs, when we're trying to get crop insurance, we're trying to get all the things that farmers need, we absolutely need nutrition programs in the farm bill so that our urban cousins, members of Congress, will support it.
Wow, I
It
never
is
knew that.
so important.
That makes them support it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's how
Mhm.
we got that. That's why Bob Dole and George McGovern
Mhm.
said, we've got to do this, 50 some years ago. They were
Mhm.
way ahead of their times. So I mentioned earlier what could happen if Congress took SNAP out of the Farm Bill. This is in Project 2025. This is written down in paper that they want to do this. So what if you took nutrition programs out? Well, they've said that they could go over to Health and Human Services. But they're going to take some significant cuts before they move them. Energy programs could go to the Department of Energy. Research and extension could go to the education department, but that's being eliminated. So where do you go with it then? The Forestry Service could go to the Interior Department. All of those things could go to other places. And by the time you do that, there'd be no reason to have a USDA secretary, USDA in general. So
That's interesting.
we've got to keep SNAP there. We've got to keep it there so that farmers get the programs that they need as well. And believe me, folks, there are farmers and there are rural people who utilize SNAP as well. It's reality. So what can we do? These are some things that we do as Farmers Union. We have what we call fly-ins, and I mentioned that we're going out to DC. Actually, it's early May. I don't know why I put mid-May. We're going out there the 5th through the 7th, and then we always go middle of September. We go to USDA and meet with the leadership there. We go meet with our senators. That's with Moran's staff. We meet with Tracy Mann and Sharice Davids, have these conversations with them. And in the past, anyway, we've always been invited to come directly to the White House and have conversations with folks at that level within the administration. So those are the things that we do as Farmers Union. But I want to end this PowerPoint with this quote from Sandra Day O'Connor, who I have deep respect for. She's, of course, passed on, but she cared deeply about civics. She cared deeply about the preservation of democracy. But she said this: you have citizens who don't understand how government works and they're kind of soured on it. All they do is criticize. They have no idea that they can make things happen. That is so, so true. And this is what we're dealing with right now. We're seeing this in real time, unfortunately.
That's a great to share.
Yeah, so I like to wrap with that one, but I'm going to go ahead and we're going to shift over to a USAID PowerPoint and then talk a little bit about tariffs as well. So this is the USAID and Food for Peace, Common History, Uncertain Future. So here's a little bit of history of American food aid. In 1812, James Madison sent emergency aid to earthquake victims in Venezuela. In the 1920s, Herbert Hoover led the American Relief Administration and sent $20 million in food over to Russia for the Russian Famine Relief Act. And in 1948, we launched the Marshall Plan, which provided dollars for Europeans to purchase American food exports. And of course, that was, just following World War II. And Europe was obviously very devastated by that. But USAID came about through this right here. Ag surpluses, meaning the crops that we grow here in Kansas and all over the country, had reached an all-time high. We were more productive than we were consumptive. We couldn't consume all that we were growing. But it cost a lot of money to store those commodities. It was expensive, and it was at risk of going to waste. Food for Peace was literally born and bred in Kansas. There was a farmer in Cheyenne County, clear out in western Kansas, by the name of Peter O'Brien. He grew a lot of these commodities and was concerned about the issue. He suggested that this excess food be sent to those countries in need. And he understood that out of abundance, we have a moral duty and opportunity to feed the hungry. It sparked the origin of the program that then became Food for Peace. And the Agriculture, Trade, Development, and Assistance Act was signed into law by another great Kansan, President Dwight D. Eisenhower, in 1954. That is what created Food for Peace just over 70 years ago. The program's premise was simple, but impactful. By leveraging the food surpluses we produce in Kansas and all over the nation, we could address famine around the world, creating new markets for our commodities and bolstering our ag economy. That stamp there on the left is a Food for Peace stamp that was created when this was passed. And you can actually still find these on eBay, by the way. So here's Eisenhower addressing the United Nations after he signed this into law. He said, "We must never forget that there are hundreds of millions of people, particularly in the less developed parts of the world, suffering from hunger and malnutrition, even though a number of countries, my own included, are producing food in surplus. This paradox should not be allowed to continue." That was, again, 1954. I think we'll all recognize at least the one gentleman on the left, and we've already seen the gentleman on the right. But JFK said, "Food is strength, and food is peace, and food is freedom, and food is a helping hand to people around the world whose goodwill and friendship we want." It's soft diplomacy, really, at the end of the day. When people are not hungry, when people are fed, those people tend to not get into quote unquote skirmishes, tend to not start wars, tend to not try to take over other places and get into conflicts. The gentleman on the right, or on my right to JFK's left, again, is George McGovern. He was the first administrator of USAID before he became a U.S. Senator. Bob Dole, again, played a role in this. He authored an amendment that called for a bread and butter corps of farmers from the U.S. who would travel to these developing countries and teach technical skills to grow and sustain crops. That program became what we knew to be farmer to farmer. And I know many people who participated in this, farmers from all across the country that went to other places all around the world and shared the skills that they had so that people in other places could grow the food that sustained them. And that became a new provision written into the reauthorization of Food for Peace. But unfortunately, due to recent cuts, it no longer exists. So the impact and legacy. 1954, the first shipments of American wheat and corn were sent to Korea and Greece. Korea was just coming off of the Korean War, obviously. By the end of Food for Peace's initial year of operation, it had fed 1.2 million people in 1 year's time. Over the last 70 plus years, it has fed more than 4 billion people. That's billion with a B, in more than 150 countries, and that's all with American-grown commodities. Each year, prior to all of the cuts and changes that have happened here recently, they would purchase about $2.1 billion worth of American commodities from farmers. So what's next? Well, we've seen these two before. Jerry Moran on the left, Tracy Mann on the right. Jerry's a senator from Kansas. Tracy's a representative from Kansas. They have, since all of the changes and all the cuts and the freezes and everything with USAID and Food for Peace, have introduced legislation that would move Food for Peace as an entity over to the Foreign Agriculture Service over at USDA. So right now, Food for Peace still exists. It's basically on life support right now over at the State Department. And right now, USAID is still in existence, quote unquote. They went from 10,000 employees down to 15 employees over the last couple months. They are legally required to have at least 15 employees.
It's USAID
That's
went from
USAID.
10,000 to 15.
Yeah, 10,000 to 15. And that's not even counting the contract employees that they would do contract work with all over the world. That number is right around 50,000 people. So we're talking upwards of 60,000 people who have lost their jobs because of these cuts. And farmers have lost a market, obviously. In Kansas, wheat and grain sorghum are the main crops that we would sell to USAID. In fact, the grain sorghum that's grown in Kansas primarily goes into the Food for Peace program. And right now, any grain sorghum that is sitting in storage or that is probably, right now actually being planted in some cases in the state or all over the country, really has no market. This was the main market for it. And the people that are trying to get rid of that old crop, the crop that's in storage right now, don't have anywhere to go with it. It can be fed to cattle or livestock. It can be turned into biofuels. But I think at the end of the day, most folks would like to see it go into the bellies of hungry people. That's where we would prefer to see it go. So, these two have introduced this legislation. It is now sitting in respective committees. I think one's in Foreign Affairs and one's in Foreign Relations Committee. But time will tell. I've been told that there are people now at USDA who are in place and ready to take this program on when it becomes law, when it's passed into law. But I have concerns. I have concerns about whether the funding is going to be there because, DOGE is still doing their damage. They're still taking the chainsaw and wrecking ball or whatever you want to call it to everything. So is the Foreign Ag Service going to have the funding that they need? Is there going to be funding that's tied to this piece of legislation? Are we going to have the capacity? Are we going to have the people? And are they going to know what they're doing? Because there's a lot of logistics that go into this. There's a lot of work and implementation. It took a lot of people to do that good work when Food for Peace was still in existence under USAID. My worry is that we're not going to get back to that level anytime soon. So I do know, because Senator Moran, I've been working closely with him and his office, that they were able to get the food aid that was sitting in barges in ports all across the country to its destination. That was back on February 8th. He actually called me personally to tell me that, which I was thankful for. That's a good thing. But there's still plenty of that food sitting in bags all over the country in, warehouses. And there's lots of it, as I said a little bit ago, grain sorghum that's sitting in grain elevators as well, all over the country that has nowhere to go. So, and farmers are planting. Farmers are in the process of spring planting as we speak. So they don't know that they're even going to have a market for what they're putting in the ground right now, which is unfortunate. So that's kind of where things are right now with USAID. And I'm not going to dwell on this real quick, but these are just a handful of the places that I've talked about this over the last couple months. It started with 12 News, KWCH out of Wichita. Rachel Maddow picked it up, and then it just went nuts from there. I actually have an interview with a reporter from the New York Times on Monday. She's coming to our office. So the world is watching us.
That's
They're
good.
paying very close attention to what's happening because what's happening affects them as well. And we need to be mindful of that. And we need to address it in a way that's constructive and
Hmm.
progressive.
Hmm.
And I appreciate the fact that we're having this conversation here tonight,
Hmm.
and that we're getting the message out there. So yeah, so you can kind of see this image here. These are shipping containers, obviously the US and the Chinese flags, but I'm having a little fun tonight. So trade wars, huh? Good God, y'all. What are they good for? Absolutely nothing. Uh, and that's really at the end of the day what it boils down to. Um, Trade wars do two things. They drive the prices of the things that farmers sell, meaning their crops and their livestock. They drive those prices down, and a trade war or tariffs drive the prices of the things that they need up. So we talk about steel tariffs, we talk about aluminum tariffs. Steel and aluminum make up a large amount of what farmers need in the equipment that they buy, the tractors and the combines and the discs and the cultivators and the planters and all those things that it takes to be a farmer. Um, it also drives the prices down on commodity crops. Primarily when we're talking about this trade war with China, soybeans. And we saw this happen in 2018, and we should have learned from that. In 2018, we got into a trade war with China, and China said, well, guess what? We don't have to buy soybeans from you anymore. We can go to Brazil and we can go to Argentina. And yeah, we're going to pay a little more for it, but we also don't have to deal with you. So, we have options. We as eaters and consumers like options. We like to be able to go to the grocery store and say, well, I'm not going to buy that because it's more than I want to spend. Or I'm not
Hmm.
going to buy that because it's not the quality that I want. Well, it's no different. China's doing the very same thing, and they have every right to do that.
So
Um,
we have a couple questions kind of
yeah,
that have been fitting into what you've been talking about.
yeah,
So one is that, so what would happen with this end of the farm to community program that provides schools with lunch and produce? How would an end to that affect farmers, right? And then also, how is it affecting farmers, if they know that they may not have a place to sell any excess, right? So
right.
they planting differently this spring.
So unfortunately for some of these farmers, they've already purchased the seed. They've already put some of that seed in the ground. So they're locked in. But yeah, some of these programs that have received cuts, the local food purchasing act and all of those things, um, these farmers have been cut off at the knees. And,
Mm-hmm.
and they're basically having to scramble and figure out where they can go with these products, with the produce that they're growing, especially, and that kind of thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
and many of these farmers are not, direct marketers. They're not selling directly to the consumer at like a farmer's market or something, but they're dealing with oftentimes larger institutions. So you're talking your schools or your hospitals or prisons
Mm-hmm.
or things like that where they can sell bulk, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, they're really going to be struggling to
Mm-hmm.
find a way to fill that gap. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there will probably be crops that will be destroyed because of this. Because if they don't have access to a market, if they haven't already signed a contract or figured out some way to move this in a way that covers their costs, so that they can cover their inputs and seed, fertilizer, uh, whatever it may be, then unfortunately in many cases they may have to destroy some of these crops. And there is not good affordable crop insurance for these specialty crop growers. I mean, there's whole farm uh, revenue protection, but it's very expensive, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to be at a very large level to be able to even consider insuring it. But it doesn't insure, you don't get insurance when you have to go out and disc it up. It's only insured when you have a disaster or, pest and those kinds of things. So,
So
so
one thing
farmers are.
asking, sorry, one person was asking, like, so all this is going on, right? But like,
Mhm.
what can we do?
Yeah,
Right? I mean, we don't, whether we, are a farmer living in a rural area or, like many of us living in cities and suburbs? What,
Yeah.
what can we do?
So those of us who are eaters, and that's all of us,
Yeah.
we need to support local farmers. We need to be
Mhm.
buying from our farmers directly, seeking them out, finding out, where you can buy the produce that you enjoy or that your family enjoys, purchasing meat directly from farmers. And yeah,
Okay.
it's probably going to cost you a little more. And I know that times are tight for a lot of people. But for every dollar that you spend that goes directly into that farmer's pocket, that's a
Hmm.
dollar that he or she is going to put right back into their local economy. And that dollar is going to revolve on itself upwards of 7 times. So $1 becomes $7. So
Okay.
the more that you can spend your food dollar locally,
Uh,
the better off things are going to be.
so
So
farmers markets,
yeah,
CSAs
yeah,
for folks who live in the suburbs and urban areas, small little
absolutely.
stands, whatever, and this is the time, right? Spring and summer where
Oh yeah,
we can
it's
start really directly supporting. Okay.
it's ramping up right now.
Mhm.
And if you know a farmer, or
Yeah.
even if you don't know a farmer, there's resources out there. There's places that you can go to find, farmers market directories and those kinds of things, and develop a relationship with them. It really means something when you can walk up to a booth at a farmer's market and look that person in the eye and know where your food is coming from and know that they put a lot of care and effort and time and blood and sweat and tears and money and all of those things into what you're taking home to feed yourself and feed your family. And it's hard to put a price on that,
Hmm.
but they do. And I buy all my eggs locally, and I only pay $4 a dozen,
Hmm.
paying whatever the grocery store is charging. And I don't grow a garden because I travel too much for my job and I'm not home enough. And I've got deer and I've got raccoons and I've got rabbits and they'll eat it before I do.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
buy everything that I consume in the spring and summer months from farmers locally. And
Hmm.
that's important because that's what we need to do. We need to do that as a society. Uh,
Hmm.
but the other thing that we need to do is we need to speak up for these farmers because remember, there's only about 2 million farms in this country. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's 2 million farmers. Uh, you know, so we've got to be a voice for them. And that's part of the role that I play in the job that I have. And of course, we're advocating for these things when we go to DC here in a couple weeks. But it takes folks who are the consumers, who are the eaters, speaking up and saying, this is important and here's why. And you find something in the farm bill that matters to you. But this trade war issue, the tariffs issue, this is it has just as much an effect on consumers as it does on farmers because it's going to drive inflation even further up. It's going to drive the price of the things that you buy at the grocery store further up because they've got to pass that cost on to somebody, and it's going to be us. It's going to be
Hmm.
all of us who consume things because we all do. It is a tax, and it's only going to cause further and further problems if
Hmm.
we don't speak up and say something. So reach out to your members of Congress. And yeah, you're going to be sitting on the phone for a while, and you may not get through to a person. You may be leaving a voicemail, but do it and do it on a regular basis because they need to hear this.
Nick, we
Um,
have so many amazing questions. Do you mind if I hit some of them? These are really
Go
thoughtful.
ahead.
Okay, great. And we might have to wrap up and I can have you kind of blog out the rest of the stuff. But
Sure,
this one I thought
sure.
was really good. How can we engage our local farmers and develop relationships with them in regions where they're multi-generational conservative voters? Right? It seems to me that our
Yeah.
Congress reps intentionally mislead them that programs like SNAP work against the farms rather than being a major assistance for them. So I think that's a good question if you have some tips for how we can engage our local farmers.
I think we have to do a better job of talking to each other and
Okay.
and not just talking to each other, but listening to each other, having these conversations and understanding why people vote the way they vote.
Hmm.
And maybe not agreeing with that, but understanding why they vote the way they vote.
Hmm.
And that starts with, again, building a relationship. You've got
Hmm.
to get to know these folks. And some of them may be members of your own family.
Hmm.
I deal with it all the time because we have a membership organization that's made up of every political stripe you can think of.
Hmm.
We're not all Republicans, we're not all Democrats, and we're not all everything in between. We are a mix of everything. Uh,
Hmm.
and it's a struggle. Believe me, it's not easy.
Hmm.
And telling that story to national and international news has not been easy either because I know
Hmm.
where I am personally because I
Hmm.
didn't vote for this. I
Hmm.
understood the assignment
Right, right.
and all that, but I at the end of the day I have to represent everybody.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yes, exactly.
so we have to have these conversations. We've got to do a better job of knowing where people are coming from.
Uh,
And
so
frankly, we've got to do a better job of getting good candidates that can speak to these issues in rural areas.
very true.
That's where we're really struggling, especially in the Democratic Party. Uh,
Yes.
that's where it's really important.
So do you think this is kind of an amalgam of a couple questions. So would farmers join in some of these protests that are happening? Is that, and then why did they support Trump? It's sort of adjacently related. Why did they support Trump after the mess he created for farmers last time?
Sure. So yes, farmers are joining these protests. I was at the one in Wichita on what was it, April 4th or 5th. I
Hmm.
spoke there. There were 1,000 people. They had me speak on behalf of farmers. A number of our board members at Kansas Farmers Union were part of the protest in Topeka and other places all across Kansas. Uh,
Hmm.
it was so wonderful to hear that they cared enough to walk away from their farm for a good chunk of the day to do.
Right.
Luckily, the weather was really crappy here in Kansas that day, so you could feed the
Right.
cows and then go to Topeka or Wichita. But I'll tell you, the reason why a lot of farmers don't do it is because they're busy. Uh,
Uh-huh.
they wake up every morning and there's work all around them. And
Ah.
especially right now with getting ready for planting season and all that. They
Hmm.
might be there in spirit, but they can't be there in person. Uh,
Okay.
but that's why those of us who can do that need to speak up for them. And
That's a very good point.
I
Yeah.
was so glad in Wichita that day to see so many signs saying "Hands off our farmers."
Right.
You know? And that made me feel pretty good that people
Sure.
cared about that. So we've got to continue doing that. What was the second question, Nancy?
Oh, another question was, so Project 2025, is the goal to reduce small farms in Project 2025? Is that what, and then do you see that happening, already? We know it was happening,
Yeah.
right? The corporate takeover. Are there signs that that's increasing now, Nick?
Well, I don't think at this point, I think it's hard to tell. We're still pretty early into all of this. I mean, we're on what, 90 days in, basically, give or take.
Feels like 900.
Feels like, yeah, yeah. I wish it were. We'd be that much closer to it being over.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I think people are just kind of waiting with bated breath.
Right.
They're anxious about it. I can't help but think that if we continue down this path, if we continue down the path of tariffs and trade wars,
Hmm.
cutting programs that are beneficial to farmers and not passing a farm bill and not doing the things because again, farmers are price takers. They're not
Hmm.
price makers. They're not like your regular business person downtown Main Street or downtown Kansas City who can set a price for whatever they're selling. Farmers have to take the price for whatever the market dictates. And so even though they might have money sunk in it at a certain level, that doesn't
Hmm.
mean that's what they're going to get in return. So we've got to have programs that help to bolster them. That's why crop insurance is important. That's why a lot of these programs are important. So we've got to continue to lift them up.
So, I've learned a ton, like you just said, they're price takers, not price makers. And I was thought that's true. I guess when I think about that, I know that.
Yeah,
But what are some myths that you think there are a lot of people on the call tonight that are farmers. There's, a lot that aren't. So what do you wish that non-farm people understood about being a farmer? Because some of the myths are,
yeah,
why do they always bail them out?
sure.
Why are they always getting money and then they don't
Well,
vote in their best interest? That's probably the number one, but chime in, folks, if you think there's others.
well, I go back to what happened in 2018 and 2019 when we were going down that trade war path with China again.
Right.
Tariffs and the Trump administration said, well, we'll bail out the farmers using what was it's called the Commodity Credit Corporation, and it's a
Mhm.
$33 billion fund that is basically set aside. It's like a rainy day fund. And
Okay.
the Secretary of Agriculture has the discretion of how that is used. So back when all this happened and they realized that we were literally cutting our nose off to spite our face by telling China, sorry, we're putting 100 and some odd% tariffs on this, and China said, well, we're not buying soybeans from you. The bottom fell out of the soybean market.
Hmm.
And Trump and company looked at that and said, oh crap, what do we do?
Right.
Well, they started sending checks to farmers.
Mhm.
So yes, there's that fund there, and it sits there and it's as needed, but that fund only stays there for a year. And then
Mhm.
if you use it all up, well, then you have to wait you have to wait until the fiscal year starts again before you get that money back. It doesn't just automatically, refresh or renew.
Mhm.
So we don't have a lot of options available when it comes to quote unquote bailing out farmers.
Mhm.
But if we don't do those things, say for instance, we just said, we'll let the market dictate what happens, then
Mhm.
you're going to start seeing those things happen. You're going to start seeing farmers lose their farms.
Mhm.
And especially now where many farmers are leveraged to the hilt, they've got a lot of debt on their land and on their equipment and on their livestock and on the inputs that they have to have, your seed, your fertilizer, your chemicals, all those things. And bankers are looking at these numbers and they're looking at projections and they're saying, this isn't working. So
Mhm.
if the government doesn't do something, if they don't come in and say, we're not going to be able to make you whole, but we might be able to keep your head above water, uh,
Mhm.
well, then, that's just the way it's going to have to be. But they can't
Mhm.
spend it all at once because
Mhm.
they've only got so much to spend. The problem is, if they don't do it, we're going to start losing farms. Farms are going to go bankrupt. And then you're going to see the big farmers who don't have to worry about these things, the ones that are, well funded, maybe even the corporate type farmers. Uh,
Mhm.
this acre trader thing, which our vice president has invested in, you're
Mhm.
going to see more of that happen. It's going to drive the price of land further up so that even, especially young farmers that want to get started in farming can't compete with. But even the farmers that are well established aren't able to keep up with. So you'll see that. And then unfortunately, when you start seeing farmers lose their farms, then we start to lose farmers to mental health issues
Yes.
and suicide. And these are the kinds of things that happened and have happened over the years in the 80s, in the 90s, in so many different cases. And
Mhm.
and many of us who live in rural areas know that there are not a lot of mental health resources available to
Right.
to rural areas like there are in urban areas. So it's extremely important that we have these programs. Farmers want trade, not aid. They
Right.
want markets. They
Right.
want to be able to sell what they grow and raise for a good price that covers their costs and that allows them to put some money aside that they can live on. They'd rather have that than a check coming from the government. But if,
Right. They're hard workers, which is
yeah,
why cutting US aid just made absolutely no sense.
it made zero sense.
0 cents.
It did two good things. It fed hungry people all over the
Yes.
world, and it was a market for farmers to sell their crops.
Right.
Excess crops.
Yeah.
Trade, not aid. That's what we want.
That
That's
is a
what we
great, that is a
expect.
great phase. So you told us what we can do. So we can buy local farms. Like I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I am going to go to the farmer's market, twice a week, get my vegetables from there, right? Do a CSA, call our elected representatives, which I think a lot of us are already doing. What would be your wish list for for elected officials if they said, okay, Nick, we're going to grant you 3 wishes that will help the farming community this year, what would they be?
Well, first off, pass a farm bill and
Hmm.
do a real farm bill. Don't just do a skinny farm bill like I talked about earlier.
Right.
Actually
Okay.
go into the whole bill itself, start
Hmm.
from the ground up and work the bill like it's supposed to be done and do it
Hmm.
in a bipartisan fashion. That's
Okay.
what the farm bill has been known for since its beginnings in the 1930s.
Hmm.
Let's do justice
Mhm.
and let's actually pass a farm bill that works for everybody.
Okay.
And so that's one thing. The
Mhm.
second thing is, if we need to deal with trade, if we need to negotiate trade agreements, then do so, but do it in a manner that is not destructive. Do it in
Mhm.
a manner that is inclusive, brings everybody to the table. If you want to start a trade war, the last
Mhm.
thing you want to do is go in alone.
Right.
You want people on your side, right? And
Mhm.
who else would you want on your side except for your neighbors,
Right.
Canada and Mexico? But yet we started the war with them.
Right.
So quit pissing off your neighbors,
Mhm.
some of your best trading partners.
Right.
Um, and if we need to negotiate things, then by all means, let's do that. But let's do it in a way that is diplomatic,
Mhm.
because these, as we can see, it's been disastrous to the commodity markets. It's been disastrous to the stock market.
Mhm.
Uh, we are well on our way to a recession if we
Mhm.
don't stop this thing fast.
Mhm.
So those are the things. And and I think the other thing is, you know, if I could talk directly to legislators, I would tell them that they need to get out there and they need to talk to farmers. They need to have conversations with them and talk about the real issues that are affecting them
Mhm.
and how we can address those issues.
Mhm.
Not just this pie in the sky stuff, or the things that get you sound bites in the news, or whatever it might be, or the fuzzy, warm, and feel good stuff that you can put on social media, the propaganda that we're seeing out of this administration.
Mhm.
Talk to us. Farmers are, they're business people. Uh,
Mhm.
they have to deal with weather. They have to deal with all of these challenges. And the last thing they need to put up with is the BS that's coming from the government. And they need to take some time when they're on this little spring break or when they're on their August recess, and they need to sit down with them and they need to understand what works
Mhm.
and what doesn't work, and address those things accordingly.
So this is kind of an unfair question as we wrap up, but what do you think and it's just such a broad oversimplification, so let me see, I know this, but why do the rural folks keep voting, against their best interest? Because they are, especially in like the South, high users of SNAP,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Rural hospitals are closing.
Yeah.
You know, it, is it mostly religion? Is it mostly culture? Is it mostly history? Or is it just like that's too broad of a question to even be entertaining?
I don't think it's too broad at all, but I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. I think religion certainly plays a role in this. I
Mhm.
grew up in a Catholic family, and
Yeah,
I don't think I need to tell you the way most people vote when
yeah,
you're a Catholic in a rural area.
yes.
We all get that. We all know that. But I think also, as time has gone on, the Democratic Party has turned its back on rural America.
Okay.
It's turned
Hmm.
its back on the workers that built the Democratic Party, the
Hmm.
farmers that built the Democratic Party. When I walked into my grandparents' living, or not their living room, their dining room in their house, you walk in the front door and you're right in the dining room. They raised 11 children on a dairy farm. You walked in and there were three pictures hanging on the wall.
Hmm.
The main one in the middle was the Last Supper. On the
Yep.
left-hand side was a picture of FDR, and on the right-hand side was a picture of JFK.
Okay. I knew it. I was raised
Yeah,
Catholic too.
yeah.
Yes.
Those were their heroes.
Yes.
Jesus, the 12 apostles, FDR, and JFK. And by
100%.
the end of my grandfather's life,
Hmm.
when he died in 2013 at age 88, he
Hmm.
was voting for Republicans
Yes.
because the Democratic Party, he lost them, or they lost him.
They lost him.
Yeah. And so that's where we've got to go back. We've got to figure out how to get back to that and
Hmm.
talk about the issues that affect them.
Hmm.
And
I
and
think
it's
of it as
not
vote your
always,
values instead of voting a
yeah,
party. Vote your values. If folks
exactly.
vote your values in rural parts of Kansas, they'd be
Yeah.
much more, because we had the abortion vote, as you know, right after Roe was dismantled, and we maintained keeping abortion rights because it was governmental overreach. That was the message, and everybody said, "Yeah, you're right. That is." and that's how it won. So if we get it to the values, it seems to kind of move a little bit more.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. I think
Yeah.
that's where it starts, and it's not going to happen overnight, but
No.
slowly over time, I think that's where we're going to start to see things move. And
Hmm.
you're going to pick up ground. It's going to take a while,
Hmm.
but we've got to return to that. If we ever expect to get anywhere in rural
Yeah.
America, we've got to get back to those issues. So,
Uh-huh. So I have one last question for you, and I'm
okay.
so grateful to have spent this time with you. I can't even tell you how much I've learned. I've been taking copious notes. Can you clarify how you think Dems turned away from rural voters, right? I mean, and I agree with this person. Like, I don't disagree, but I
Yeah.
don't see how what the Republicans are doing to help them.
Well,
Would
they're
you say-
not,
right?
especially right now, they're hurting them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
and that's the thing. I get these comments all the time that, well, this is what farmers voted for. Well, yes and no. I think part of this is there's a hell of a lot of misinformation that's being pushed out into rural areas.
Hmm.
There's a lot of confusion around issues and things that affect farmers and affect rural areas, and there's a major information gap there. And
Hmm.
where people consume their media, what they consume as far as their media. I go
Hmm.
home at night and I watch NPR, or I watch PBS NewsHour. I listen to
Hmm.
NPR in the mornings. I
Hmm.
bet I'm the only one in a quite a distance that does that. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, so there's that. And there's people that are listening to a lot of talk radio and a lot of, frankly, crap information that's
Right.
pushed out to them, and they don't know any different because they don't
Hmm.
question it. And I
Hmm.
see one right there, civics and government.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We've got to get back to teaching that in our schools, but we
We,
also have to get back to teaching it to ourselves as adults because we're
yes.
losing that.
Yes.
It's happening right now in real time.
Right.
This fact that we're losing democracy
Yes.
on a daily basis. And the programs that people have relied on for years and programs that
Mhm.
have always been there, when they go away, they're not going to come back.
Right.
And
Oh,
and and we have to talk about these things in a way that shows how important it is that we preserve it
and
and build it back up.
it's funny that you mentioned the civic school and somebody had, I see that you saw that because just this week, Martha, who we run boots on the ground, we were thinking about how vacation Bible school signs will start popping up soon.
Oh yeah,
I'm thinking,
yeah.
well, that's great, but wouldn't that be amazing if there was like civic school for kids for a
Oh,
week in
oh
the
yes.
summer? You
Yeah.
know?
Well, I had Sandra Day O'Connor's picture up earlier, and
Yes.
her institute in Arizona does
Yeah.
a summer camp for kids on civics. And
Oh,
every community should be having a summer camp for civics. You shouldn't
if we're
have to go
doing,
to Phoenix, Arizona to get that. You should
yeah,
have it in Belleville, Kansas, and you should have it in Lenexa, Kansas, and you should have it in every small
absolutely.
town. So, and civic school for adults. Yeah, I just saw that
Yes,
pop up.
that's
We
so
need to,
true.
and there are great resources out there.
Uh-huh.
In fact, the Sandra Day O'Connor Institute
Hmm.
has wonderful civics resources for kids, for adults,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
those things.
Okay, I'm gonna
So
look at
check it out.
that.
Check it out.
I will. Oh gosh, Nick, thank you so much. Can I like give you applause? I don't know how to do my little emojis from the bottom. Um, I know you had a full day here in a different city, and you're sitting in a hotel room doing this and educating us because, many of us don't know anything, though I certainly don't want to call everybody with many, many knowledgeable folks on this call with amazing questions. So thank you, one and all. I did record this, so we'll put it up on our website. We'll, trim out my drivel on either end. And it will be there. And then I'm going to follow up with you, Nick, to kind of turn this into sort of more of a blog post for our Substack,
Yeah,
because I think that could be really, really helpful for folks and we can share it around.
absolutely. And
So,
folks, if
okay.
you have questions that I didn't get to, and I know there were plenty,
Mhm.
email me, nick@kansasfarmersunion.org,
I'm gonna put that
NICK
there.
at kansasfarmersunion.org, and I'll try to get it answered as soon as I can. But
Oh, you're the
I know
best.
I know there were a lot of questions I didn't get to, and
Yeah.
if there's things that you need clarification on or other stuff,
I'll let you know too. Okay, thank you, Nick. I'm so grateful. And
Very
thank you
welcome.
everybody else for being on the call. Thank you. Have a good night.
Glad to be with you. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.